In case you missed our last episode of Life with the Polites, MRL, Marriage, Relationships, and Love, here's what you missed.
To just dive right into what I'm trying to share, I've learned that there are, I call them the cousins. There are two spirits that I call cousins. And the reason why I call them cousins is because they are so connected, one with the other. And so yesterday, as I had a moment to look over the course of my adult life, I began to realize and find that, there are four strong spirits seem to evolve and cause people to give situations to God and walk away from family, friends, co-workers, or neighbors because there is bitterness, envy, jealousy, and selfishness. And where those four spirits are, there will always be strife, rivalry, and wars to fight. But the main two that I think that connects to the ones that I just mentioned is bitterness and selfishness, because bitterness is the root that will then allow envy and jealousy to set in. And when all three of those are there, selfishness is always a part of every decision concerning those particular areas that the individuals are displaying bitterness, envy, and jealousy. And sometimes we don't even know it's there because it's internal. But when certain things come up, you will identify that it's there. And so we have to come to a point of realizing that no one in this world should always be in a battle. Yes, I know the Lord says that we're going to have sufferings and we're going to endure, but no one in this world should always be in battles all day, every day, and all their life. It's like a swimmer gasping for air after every stroke of moving through water. Can you just imagine God throwing or placing you into a pool with no edges, steps, ladder, or way to exit? Just how exhausted you would be if you had to gasp for air every second for its eternity. That's what these four spirits do. But like I said, it's the cousins that will cause the strife, the rivalry, and wars to fight. And those cousins I call as bitterness and selfishness. So when we think about that swimmer that I was saying, whether you are a backstroker or you swim on your stomach, you constantly got to breathe for air. Okay. And so if you're constantly, gasping for air in between all these battles that you're going through or the struggles that you're going through, the lungs, the heart, and the body will grow weary and heavy as a log. And the swimmer who once swam like a fish will now drift with the waves or die from exhaustion. Whether we are drifting or exhausted, Jesus says we are to be fishers of men. But what happens when the fisherman or fisherwoman is exhausted or drifting due to acts of bitterness, envy, jealousy, and selfishness that lies within the fish that he or she is surrounded by? Amen. So we ought to be fishermen, but what do we do when the fish that are around us are filled with bitterness, envy, jealousy, and selfishness, which then will cause strife, rivalry, and many wars to fight in your daily life? The question that you need to ask yourself today is whether you are the fisherman or fish that is harboring or displaying these spirits, or are you the person dealing with all the attacks while everyone else gets to behave, have, and succeed? I'm going to say that again. Are you the fisherman or the fish that is harboring or displaying these spirits, or are you the person dealing with all the attacks while everyone else gets to behave, gets to have, and succeed at their appointed time and season, at their early age, and you have to struggle through your latter years to strive for goals and dreams because you've been the fisherman who has been loving, sacrificing, betrayed, used, and accused. This is not a hollowing or a how can I say, or a humorous message for me today, because this comes home for me. So let's face it, whenever you are in a relationship, no matter what type of relationship it is, and the two people that are involved are not getting a satisfaction of striving and succeeding at the same time or in the same season, then someone is holding on to bitterness, envy, jealousy, and selfishness. And sometimes some of us don't even recognize that we ourselves are still holding bitterness, envy, jealousy, and being selfish. And again, like I said, if you are doing that, you will identify it, because then there will be strife, rivalry, and wars to fight. The sad thing about bitterness, envy, jealousy, and selfishness is that it may not even have anything to do with you, what you did or did not do. Most of the times, bitterness, envy, jealousy, and selfishness comes from fights and wars that the person has had, the other party has had in their childhood, or bad relationships. How do we know that? You can simply be supplying, the person who is under the attack can simply be supplying a solution to a present day problem in your relationship right now. But because the topic was a war somewhere in the other person's life, you get the backlash. You get the shutdown. You become accused, not understanding, and not growing in the knowledge and wisdom that God has given you. You become the bad guy. And they tell everyone you know that you're the bad guy. That brings, to mind, I can probably get a little humorous here, but that brings to my mind, I was sharing with you, the scene with Al Pacino, and I think it was Scarface, and he's in the restaurant, and he's, he's intoxicated, and he says to the people, say hello to the bad guy. Say hello to the bad guy. While you point your finger at everybody else, I'll be the bad guy. Say hello to the bad guy. And that is just what happens when you are in or dealing with a person or in a situation where bitterness, envy, jealousy, and selfishness is there. Because when you're bringing information or situations to that person, if they come back at you where there is the strife and the rivalry and a war, and I want to describe something here, because sometimes, when we think of the word bitterness, envy, and jealousy, we don't connect that to us. But can you honestly say that when you're in a conversation with the person that you love, it can be anybody, again, it could be your spouse, it could be your children, it could be your co-worker, when there is a topic that is coming up, some of us don't really realize that the bitterness is still there from a war or fight from before, because you become angry and disappointed because you feel like you're being treated unfairly with that issue or that topic. And necessarily that's not always the case. It's the fact that you may have some unresolved issues and bitterness or what may have happened to you with that similar topic, but now it's with a different person, a different time, a different season. Some of us don't realize that we do have envy within our spirit. Yeah, we may be fine, we may have this, we may have succeeded, we may be, happy with where we are today. But if there's a feeling of discontentment or resentfulness that arouses when someone else is having a discussion with you, then there's envy there. And sometimes we don't see that's envy because we think that it has to do with something that somebody else has and you don't have. And sometimes it's not that. It's just the fact that the other person may have a quality or a strength that you don't have. And so you come at them when they're bringing information. Some of us, when we think of the word jealousy, we know that it's a feeling of showing envy of someone or their achievements and advantages. But sometimes jealousy is not only that. But jealousy can also be when a person is fiercely protective or vigilant of one's own right and possession. So when you start to talk about something that goes against what they feel is their right or their possession, and they're not willing to let go of that because of past and prior battles and wars or whatever they have had, the bitterness has already taken root in that area. And so in reality, sometimes people become envy because you're able to let go or to do things that they are not willing to do. And so the reality is there is bitterness, there is envy, and there is some jealousy and selfishness in each and every one of us that we have to search and find. So how do we know when it's there? Because when it becomes to where the strife and the rivalry, when the strife meaning the lack and the consideration for others, whereas the others is more concerned for you than what you're really deeply rootedly fighting for, there's strife. When there is rivalry, there seems to be a competition for the same objective or for superiority in the same field. And so the rivalry begins to arrive. And you find yourself always being in a war battle, whether it's an argumentative battle, a conflict, whether it's a dispute, whether it's a simple argument. But those simple things become very large and huge if it continues to go on. And both individuals, number one, the person who is displaying the bitterness do not identify that. And number two, the person who's being attacked cannot get to the root of it to help the other individual to recognize that this is what's going on in their relationship. The sad thing about bitterness and selfishness is that eventually the person who is taking on this attack becomes the victim. As time go on, the person that is constantly battling these wars that are not most of the time theirs, because someone else, their significant other, their children, their parents, their co-workers, eventually they become the victim. Because sometimes people don't identify the fact that they are bitter. Why? Because they think that they're okay. They are right. They have what they have. They accomplish what they have, what they accomplish. And sometimes, it's not just about accomplishments and they don't realize it. Even when people in their failures, they are bitter. They are envy and they are jealous of others or other things or other whatever it may be. And they don't realize it. And so they become bullies and they victimize the person that they say they love, because they themselves are not identifying that they have the root of bitterness within them from a past and prior situation. So when I speak of that victim, I think I want people to really start to self-evaluate, because, sometimes we who are the victims, we don't even realize that we are the victims, because for so long we call it loving that other person. Although we know that we have been hurt and we're constantly being hurt when these certain topics or these certain issues come up. And so as Christians, we know our job is to love. But it comes to a point to where you have to stop and realize that you are being victimized. Because when you have been in a relationship with individuals for so long, and these same topics keeps bringing these bad behaviors, these bad attitudes, these battles, this strife, You have to come to the point of realizing that, is my love worth still being victimized? Or do I have to come to the point of loving myself more than I love the person who's victimizing me? So on that, I'm going to say, how do we identify that we're the victim? Because you become the person to assist in everyone else's dreams and struggles while they bathe in their failures or successes from being bitter, envy, jealous, and selfish. However, you continue to assist with love when it is clear to Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles that you are being victimized. Every time you help them and they know they are wrong, never apologize and avoid conversations. Those were one of the things that we spoke of in the message that you gave, okay? How do you know that you're being victimized? Because the person that you're constantly trying to help them to realize that their actions is actions from bitterness and envy, whatever, blah, blah, blah. You realize that even as you're going through those situations, there's never an apology to whatever wrong or hurt they're bringing on you. They avoid conversations and they're never wrong. You know, I know someone right now, particular that's at my place of employment that has actually said, I don't apologize. I'll never apologize. Wow. And so when you hear someone say that, there has to be some sort of bitterness somewhere in them that has caused them to get to that point. And then it goes back to the two cousins, because someone who can say that is selfish, because it is all about their perspectives, their wants and their needs. And so and it goes back to what I said, a little while ago, where when you have people who are bitter, envy, and jealous and selfish, there's never going to be that time and season where both parties are satisfied and striving and succeeding at the same time in the same season. And that's a key right there. If you find that you are constantly the one that is taking the back seat while everyone else is moving forward, that right there that right there is in letting you know that you're being victimized. And you're being victimized through other people being bitter, envy, and jealous of whatever it is that's on the table that you're dealing the issue with. And it has to be, we have to come to the point of really examining and saying, hey, this is what it is. Because sometimes we say, oh, it's love, I'm in it, and this is happening because I love, I'm allowing this to happen because I love the other person. Mm-hmm. But if the other person loves you back, then why are you not also being able to succeed and to obtain and to be satisfied in these times and seasons when everybody else is? Because when everybody else is moving along and being happy and satisfied and you are not, those are indications that there's some selfishness there. So how do we deal with that? If you have two blind men in a room that can hear these conversations and they can clearly see that you are being victimized, why is the person who's being victimized cannot see that it's not love, it's victimized? And sometimes I think it's because the one who is truly loving in these areas of the lives of everyone, we think that it's being Christian. And yes, God do tell us to love and endure and all of that, but it comes to a point to when do everyone stop and look at whoever house you are in right now, stop and look at everyone's life. And do a self-evaluation. And see where everybody is at. Now, some may have succeeded and some may have failed. But either way, it has happened because you have people who love you, that is in that circle, that is helping and assisting. But because those four spirits and those two cousins are ruling, you are either succeeding or you're failing. But the one who is really doing the assisting, and sometimes it's not just one, because it could be a back and forth thing, because we all, like I said, all of us have a bit of these spirits, and we need to identify where it's at, so that when you're sitting down with whoever it is and you're addressing issues, you can hold off a minute and say, hey, I'm feeling this way because I know it's not from what's on the table right now, but because of wars and stuff I had in my past childhood or my past relationships. And I think that's very hard for people to do, is to identify that before you attack the person in front of you. Because if you don't identify it, the one that's in front of you is the one that's going to suffer and fight wars that are not theirs. So, how do we get out of the relationships of being bullied and victimized? Sometimes people become victimized because they love others more than they love themselves. And when they recognize that only, then will the victim mentality ends. You know, it's like when we hear how people are in bad relationships, and you have a relationship, I'm just speaking of probably a husband and wife, the person is cheating on them all the time. And they're in it because they love this person. They believe their love, the love of Christ that they have within them. If they're applying the word, but yet this person is constantly cheating on them. So that right there is showing that you are loving them more than you love yourself. And so the moment we realize that we have to love ourselves more in areas that we are being victimized, then the easier it would get for us to be able to succeed and be satisfied and happy in our life as well. And that's not easy, especially when you have lived all your life just loving. Because that's what God puts within us, is to love. But sometimes love gets taken advantage of. If you want to jump at any point, you just let me know.
Well, you said a mouthful, and I feel the path in which you're going. Those particular types relationships, and I'm gonna kind of use this in a double negative sense, aren't really relationships, because you have someone that's connected but has an objective. If these types of relationships are just to keep you near and for you to vanish upon the love, the consideration, and the support of another person, they can endure whatever it takes to get what they want from the relationship. But in the means of doing that, a lot of the things of what you just spoke of rise to the top. So the person that's really embracing a lot of these things get to sit back and really evaluate this bitterness, a lot of the selfishness, the jealousness that you spoke about that comes about. Because the person that's being taken advantage is now seeing the true value of the relationship. And that can be very hard, because now you have to find a place to where, I don't want to use the word attack, but you have to find a place to where you address those things that you said in a manner in which it brings clarity and release the mindset. Because a lot of people that find themselves in these types of relationship, I believe, have a mindset that's already been conditioned. And so what you're doing is trying not to unbreak what they've formulated or what they think the truth truly is. You're trying to break open a conversation to allow to give them some truth to why in which they may be feeling. The challenge is, in a lot of types of relationships that you're describing, is you have one individual that's dug in like a foxhole. They've gotten in position So this is where they are, and there is nothing that really is going to change them. But on the other side, you see the vanilla in them. And what I mean about the vanilla in them, you see what's not real. But they still remain close because of the value of the other person that's part of the relationship.
But I think the point that I want to drill here is that a lot of us can probably say, no, this is not me, or this is not my relationship. And the truth of the matter is, I think this is in every relationship. I think, and the reason why I say that is because some of us really truly don't realize that we have these spirits in us because they're subtle. And the reason why I say I think everyone has a little bit in their relationship is because, number one, no man is perfect. No man is perfect. And so if we really dig deep when we are having conversations with anybody in our life on a daily basis, and if we really stop and listen to some of the things that we say when we having conversations with other people, we can stop and hear, wait a minute, I'm saying that because it's bitterness. I'm going to give a scenario. There's a particular, this is a particular situation where you have a person that don't want any help. And then when the help is offered, they refuse it. But at the same time, refusing the help also forces everyone else around them to suffer. That's selfishness. But the selfishness comes from the bitterness, because there's bitterness first of something that person is dealing with. They will refuse the help, not realizing that if it involves other people, you follow what I understand? I don't want to be specific about what I'm trying to say, but you know, how can you, when everyone needs help in this area, but because you are the person who makes, I guess, the final, who has the final decision on this, you would say no because you don't want it, but you're refusing to see how it will help everyone else around you. That stems from, there's a bitterness there. And from that bitterness, you have become selfish to allow everyone else to receive the help that they need. And that's why I say it's in everyone. Everyone needs to take the time to look at when you're having those disagreements, when you're having those arguments or those little battles. You know, some are major and some are minor as far as how it's dealt with. You follow what I'm saying? And I think that when we talk about these particular spirits, if it doesn't become exposed in a big dramatic way, people don't see that they have it. You follow what I'm saying? But if it happens in subtle ways, you don't see that it's there. And it's the word says it's the small things that levels the lump. And so, because you have some people that handles it well, because you're mature enough to deal with these moments, nevertheless, it does not mean that it's not there. You said the person who is sitting back, who is dug in basically, and I'm paraphrasing kind of what you're saying, and the person who's sitting back gets to see all of this, while the one who is probably inflicting is not. And so when it's being addressed, because you also use that word, when it's being addressed, how it's being addressed has a lot to do with how it may get exposed. You follow what I'm saying? And I find that it is, and this is something that when the Spirit gave me this yesterday, I was like, you know what, God, you are so real, because for some reason, when the person who has been victimized, okay, meaning that the person has taken the moment and noticed and recognized the hurt and the pain they are bearing. And they get to the point of saying, you know what? And I'm just going to say it this way. I'm going to stop loving in this area. I'm going to stop being patient with this. I'm going to stop sacrificing my life in this area. I'm going to stop allowing myself to be used. I'm going to stop allowing myself to be accused. Have you not noticed that when the person who has been victimized stops that, and those are all examples of loving, okay? So the moment they stop that, have you ever noticed that the accuser will begin to holler, you don't love me anymore? That's the first thing they would say. You don't love me anymore. Once the person who is victimized gets a hold of it and they stop it, they themselves say, hey, you know what? I'm no longer doing this. You follow what I'm saying? And they let the accuser know, I'm no longer doing this. Okay? The first thing that will come out the accuser's mouth is, you don't love me anymore. I want the audience to really think about it. So my question is, who in their right mind, and the thing about that is, let me just stick to what I got right here. Who in their right mind wants to constantly cast their pearls among pigs just to prove or show that they love someone? Because that's what happens when you are being victimized. You're constantly pouring out and giving all your love, all your resources, or your time. You're constantly giving. And so when you come to the point of recognizing that you are, because of all the hurt and the pain that you're constantly still enduring in these same areas within that relationship, you come to a point of realizing, hey, you know what? I know Christ says that I'm supposed to love, but I also know I have to stop casting my pearls amongst the pigs. I have to start loving myself more than loving everybody else. You know, even the prodigal son who was waddling amongst the pigs had enough sense to know he had misused and betrayed his father's love. He wanted what he wanted. And it goes back to what I said in the beginning. He wanted what he wanted in a time that it wasn't for him. But he wanted what he wanted. And he went and he did what he wanted to do. But the key thing to him is that he at one point in his life recognized that he had did wrong. And decided to come back and not be his father's child, but be his father's servant. But once again, love overruled what the son wanted to do, and the father accepted him and welcomed him back into his arms. But there are some people where you have displayed so much bitterness and envy and jealousy towards the ones who have loved you, they don't want you back anymore. Because it's too hurtful. It's too painful. That they can no longer trust that you are going to be, the different person. It becomes now, I'm loving me now. And so now you're going to have to be on the other end of the stick. Because everyone has a right to love themselves to a degree to where they are not being abused, misused, and accused. All because of the bitterness, the envy, and the jealousy that other people have. So, my question again is, when are people going to stop betraying the ones who love them because they are bitter, envy, jealous, and selfish? And the key thing here, over past injuries that are theirs or not theirs. When are people going to stop betraying the ones who love them because they are bitter, envy, jealous, and selfish over past injuries that are theirs or not theirs? And what do I mean by that? Because sometimes you have people, I remember, Mr. P, when we had my nephews here. And I'll never forget how I didn't understand why I was getting the attack from one of them. And I remember one of them telling me, and I wrote this down. I remember this person telling me, well, I'm giving to you all of what you gave to my mother. So again, they're fighting someone else's. And they're fighting someone else's battle with lies, not truth. You follow what I'm saying? And that's what I mean by, people just being so bitter from past stuff, bring it into the future that may not even be their battle as well, but it's from their childhood.
One of the things that I like to say, and give this right back to you, is the challenge is unveiling the truth. If they're fighting someone else's battle that's not theirs, how do you go about revealing the truth of that?
And that's the whole thing about bitterness. Because when people are bitter, their truths are their truths. You follow what I'm saying? And so even with what I just shared, because what was said to me was not true. Because as time went on and I got information on that, it was not true. But if people believe their truths because they're bitter, and people know why they're bitter. But when people are bitter, they tend to want to point and blame everybody else for their bitterness. I'm gonna give another example. When I finally got to have conversation with one of my children's father, who had put me through the mill. How many years later? 10, 11 years later, I get a phone call, and this person is constantly weeping and crying and whatever, telling me how out of all the people he was with, I was the one that did not deserve what he put me through. But yet, the root to it was the bitterness of what happened to a prior relationship. So his truth was, because this happened in my prior relationship, to prevent me from doing what he thought I would do from a prior relationship, not that I had did that. You follow what I'm saying? But his truth was, because this person did it, well, I believe you're going to do it, so I'm going to behave in this manner. So that was his truth through his bitterness. So no matter what me on the other end would do or say, that person's mind was always, this is what he believed, and this is how he's going to behave. And that's what I mean by people who are bitter they create their own truths. They don't even make room to hear what the real truth is, because there's so much bitterness still from their past that they still have not dealt with, that they're still angry about. So no matter what the person who stands before them is doing, they will, no matter what, believe that if this person has done it, you can do it. So I'm going to treat you. This is what I mean. I'm going to treat you the way that I should have treated that person. So you become victimized in a war, in a battle that's not even yours. How many times have we heard, people who are in relationships, and I think men always say this to women, you're blaming me for the guy who dogged you. How many times men tell females that? What is vice versa? I think the world has only adjusted to the fact that a man can say that, I think you females treat me like this because of a past relationship, but I don't think men have come to the point also realizing that you're treating your woman that you have in front of you right now based on a past relationship. And sometimes men don't think that they have when they have succeeded and accomplished, okay? Because, men are about ego. Women are about love. Men are about ego. I'm not saying men don't love, but men are about ego. Women are about love. You follow what I'm saying? And so you have to get to the bottom line is that people have to get to the root to why the bitterness is there. And again, some of us don't even want to identify, that it's there. And it is. And each and every one of us is there. It's just how you deal with it. So, to get back on track, when these four spirits, you have, like I said, that bitterness, that envy, that jealousy, which then will display selfishness in every decision, or may not every decision, but just in that area where they're bitter. And I think that's why it's overlooked, because when we hear the term selfishness, we think it's something that's displayed in every areas of our life. And it's not in every area that a person is selfish. It's just a area. Some people may have one area. Some people may have 2, 3, 4, 5 areas. Heaven help the one who got more than 1, 2, or 3. But it's there. And you will identify with how you respond to a topic. So my thing is, I think from this day moving forward, I think people need to really, if you are in relationship or you're communicating with people, when you start hearing yourself being defensive or being whatever it may be, or shooting something down, stop and say, hey, okay, what's the topic here? And I guarantee you, whatever that topic is connected to an area where they were bitter once, that they thought they were over, and they're not. And that's why the decision that they make or shut people out or whatever it may be is because of that. And they lose their blessings. They lose people. They lose family, friends, co-workers, because it's there. So when we're dealing with the four spirits, these four spirits have killed people's energy and dreams, stolen people's time, money, and destroyed people's strive to live in a successful life. And whether you are on the good or bad end of the stick, what I would like to know is, when do it stop? If people truly say they love their whomever, their spouse, their parents, their children, whomever, when do it truly stop? As Christ-like people, I know we are to turn the other cheek, pray, fast, praise, endure the sufferings, and heap coals of love on the heads of our enemies. But when do we say enough is enough? And I think it's the hardest thing for a Christian to do, is to say enough is enough. For some reason, we feel that as Christ-like people trying to be Christ-like, because we know the key fruit to being Christ-like is love. When do we say even loving somebody is enough? Some of us feel bad about saying, I've had enough. I choose not to love you anymore because it's hurting me too much. When do we say enough is enough? It gets to the point to when we're at that point of being the victim, we begin to even say, when will God hear the cry of his people? Or do people become like David and stop the bullying of uncircumcised giants and cast down the enemy within our own family, friends, co-workers, or neighbors? Better yet, when will God fight our enemies like he did in the Old Testament? Or do we have to endure the pain covered under the new covenant of love and mercy through the blood of Jesus? Tina Turner has a song, What's Love Got to Do with This? And these songs that I'm just using, enough is enough, what's love got to do with it? I'm not referring just to, because we know those songs are referring to, a man and woman in a relationship. Enough is enough, and what's love got to do, it can deal with, is I'm referring to any type of relationship that you are in, that you are being victimized. Because one of the things that, that was said in Enough is Enough is, there's no sunshine, there's no moonlight, there's no stardust, there's no sign of no romance. Heck, we don't have a chance. That's in any relationship. Who wants to be connected to somebody where there's no sun, no sunshine? You can't smile. Who wants to be in a relationship where there's no moonlight? You can't. I mean, it's so dark you don't even have light in the midst of the darkness. Who wants to be in a relationship where there's no stardust, where there's no spark, where there's no romance between the two people who say they love? There's no chance. And so when we talk about what's love got to do with this, there's a certain line in there where it says, I've been taken on a new direction. But I have to say, I've been thinking about my own protection. It scares me to feel this way. And the reason why, because when you are a person that loves and you are patient and you sacrifice and you doing all the things where everybody else is doing what needs to be done, but you're the one getting the wrong end of this thing, it's scared to say, hey, you know what? I can't love this way anymore. It makes you feel like you're being separated from God, like God separated Adam and Eve from the garden when they were disobedient. So my thing is, if God has a right to put his children out because they were disobedient, why do we as human beings in any type of relationship feel guilty when we say enough is enough? I can't love you no more. I've got to love myself. I'm putting you out. I got to do whatever it is for me to protect me. Because I'm hurting and I'm in pain so much. When we go through relationships that are filled with these four spirits, whatever fruits we are bearing, I do know one thing. We reap what we sow. We reap what we sow. And some of our fruits are withering due to sowing into or with bad company, family, friends, co-workers. So when you think of reaping and sowing, it comes to a point to where you say, I can't sow into this type of relationship anymore. I believe God has given us that right to say, I can't sow into, he says, that who sows into good ground will reap good blessings. So when it's obvious that you're constantly sowing, but you're reaping thorns and you're reaping, things that are tearing you apart, I think every human being has a right to say, enough is enough. You know what, Mr. P, I think I know that you know that I, for one, am tired of the fruit stealers and gift takers. The fruit stealers want you to bend and lower your standards and banner of God because they have no standards, or their standards are not their own. And I think that was crucial yesterday. They have no standards, or their standards are not their own. I want y'all to think about it. And the gift takers want what's yours because they haven't learned to trust the same God you serve and stand on their own. So number one, they have no standards of their own and they can't stand on their own. Because as you said a little while ago, because you as the person who's being victimized, you bring value to them. And both of them refuse to spend time with the God you serve to obtain faith that has given you the fruit and gift that they seek to have. So again, when do we say enough is enough? That's my message for today. When do we say as Christians, enough is enough? When do we are able to say no more tears? Enough is enough. Because if two people are in whatever type of relationship, if two people are solving or discussing any type of topic, when two people are trying to build on what we call love, then the moment that something is brought to the attention that there's these spirits are there, that there's bitterness there, there's this and this, and the other party do not identify, the other party is unwilling to, the other party refuses to. I mean, the thing about these spirits is that they don't even want to talk at some point. As one person in my family would say, You always feel like you got to teach somebody something. It's not about teaching. If you are in a relationship and you are hurting me, I have a right to say, can we talk? But the offense will come up, and that's their way of avoiding the conversation. Because really, see, that's the selfishness. And that's the envy. It's the bitterness first. So when people say things, we have to learn how to listen. Because when they come back in a negative way, you know, I think I'm at the point to where when I hit a negativity now, I'm going to have to stop and say, hey, where's that coming from? Especially when you know that you're just giving, you know, you're just assisting or helping, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But the moment you feel like you're starting to be attacked on what's obviously right and wrong, it's not even worth going into the conversation, but just stop and say, where's that coming from? Because I refuse to be on the battlefield for a fight that is not mine. I refuse. And my age and time right now, I refused. I refuse to allow the past to keep coming back up into my present, because people just want to hold on to bitterness and wars and battles that they don't want truths. They don't want to hear anything because they're so consumed with bitterness, envy, jealousy, and they become very selfish because they feel they have a right to hold on to what they believe is true. And it's destroying relationships. And the thing about it is that when all this stuff starts to explode, the one person everybody wants to look at to say fix it is the one who's been victimized. Because they've been so used to the person who's been victimized fixing everything all their life. I'll bring it back to you.
Well, Lady P, that's was a mighty strong and powerful message. Really, you've made an enormous amount of points in regards of going forward, in regards what many of us need to really sit back and see and take a examination of all of our relationships. You spoke of the four spirits that are constant in everyone's lives, subtle as they may, but as you addressed, we all have them. But more importantly, being in a position to really talk about why these particular attacks come at us. And sometimes they come at us very ferociously. They come with an intent and with an objective. So you've made an enormous, I couldn't even write down all the things that you said, the points rather. But it's very vital moving forward that we condition ourselves in a way in which we try to shield ourselves, protect ourselves, or remove ourselves from environments and situations like that, that's bringing these types of actions toward us. We all know that misery loves company. And a lot of those four spirits that you mentioned, bringing them together within a relationship, somebody's going to be miserable. And normally it's not the one that's really provoking. It's the one that's receiving. But thank you very much.
Well, the one that's provoking is already miserable. And that's why they're causing misery to the other person.